Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 7 of Seraph of the End. So we're past the halfway point of season 1, or technically the first cour. I think I'll just keep it Seraph of the End rather than do 2 seasons, but we're halfway through the first cour. And yeah, so Yu has a new family, and it's Shinoa and Kimizuki and Yoichi, and then Guren being their, fun uncle. And so we have Yu getting his sword, which I think is Azuramaru. That it's a very feminine sword, so feminine demon spirit inhabiting his sword. And Kimizuki and Yoichi have their weapons as well. Shinoa has hers. And so we've set up Yu and his friends for the Imperial Demon Army. And then on the other side, we have our boy Mika getting set up with the vampires, and they're all gonna converge in this one location. Imagine that. So this series, though, I will note that as it's gone on, from episode 3 on, I liked the first 2 episodes fine, but from episode 3, it started picking up, and then episodes 4, 5, and 6, I really enjoyed. So the more I get into this series, the more I like it, which is really good. I've been pleasantly surprised by just how much it's really sucked me in. But before we start this episode, I do have a note I wrote down here from Annie Flowers back in episode 3, and I wanted to make note of it. But Annie points out that Yu, whenever he was fighting both her and the delinquent student that had been possessed by the demon, when he was fighting both of them, he fought with the blunt edge of his sword, not the sharp blade. So he was intentionally trying to make sure they weren't hurt. So I was like, oh, and I don't think I commented on that in the discussion. I don't think I realized that, but that's interesting. It speaks volumes to Yu's character, because that means that even though he's, a pouty, rowdy teenager, he still is compassionate and he's trying not to hurt anybody, despite how tough and macho he seems or projects himself to be. At the end of the day, he is trying to protect people and he is being considerate. He just maybe isn't showing it as much. So I thought that was really cool. So thank you for pointing out, Annie. That was really awesome. But yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm probably going to edit out all these Universal logos at the start of this because it happens 3 times. But in any case, I'm really excited to see what happens with Seraph of the End. Should be a fun time. But we got episode 7, MITSUBA'S squad. I don't think we've met anybody named Mitsuba yet, so I'm wondering maybe who that could be. I don't know. We have that blonde girl that's in the OP, so maybe it's her. I don't know. Mitsuba, I think of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun is when I think of Mitsuba. That's what's throwing me off. I'm like, I know what Mitsuba is, but not in this show. So we'll find out though, right? So let's do that, shall we? We're going to start episode 7 of Seraph of the End, and we are going to do that here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Well, so we met Mitsuba. She's interesting. She reminds me, like I said in the reaction, a lot of Bakugo from My Hero Academia. Very, just take charge. Not maybe quite as extreme, but she's definitely a female counterpart of Yu. I like that Yu is surrounded by these, with the exception of, he has Kimizuki, who's very much like him, and he has Mitsuba, who's very much like him, and then you have Yoichi and Shinoa, who aren't quite, they're a little bit distant opposites. But yeah, she's an interesting character. I like how Shinoa blatantly says to Yu, oh, you'll find out her backstory later. Don't worry about it now. We get a glimpse of it here. So we get Azuramaru. The demon basically is saying that the darkness inside of Yu is the fact that he left Mika behind. And I'm very curious. We know that Mika is still alive only as a vampire. And so I'm wondering when they reunite how that's going to affect Azuramaru's effect on Yu, because Azuramaru says if you ever get weakened, if your heart ever gets weakened, I'll take you over and I'll seek out revenge myself, my own way, which basically means she'll take him over. So I do find it, again, a little bit disturbing that these demons are basically part of them now. No worries there, and that they are inhabiting their dreams. I'm like, so what is Guren? Guren's had his demon seemingly for a while now, so how does that work? It's interesting. Do any of the others have their dreams affected by the demons they've made contracts with? I don't know. I also like that Yu's pajamas are this soft yellow. It's a soft, eggshell yellow, It's very gentle despite, his macho appearance. And so then, yeah, I don't know why he gets kind of he gets a little amused when he looks over at his clothes and everything. Interesting. But then, yeah, he's all excited because it's the day he finally gets to go and have an actual mission. But yeah, so it's going to be curious when him and Mika reunite. I'm, of course, thinking that Yu is going to feel guilty because Mika is a vampire now. He's going to feel guilty about that. But also, you know, you couldn't do anything about it. So, but I'm sure it's going to be a source of angst. I'm like, I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that at all. Nope. And when Mika finds out that Yu's part of the extermination squad, like, but I think he already knows. What's that going to be like? But he kept the gun. He kept the gun that had shot Farid with. And he says for Mika, interesting. Maybe that's what he was looking at, was over there at the gun. Like, that's his, it's, Ajimaru says that that's the source of his darkness is Mika, but also it's a source of his light. It's a source of what keeps him going. And we'll talk about that because Guren makes a statement later on that it's such a throwaway line, but I feel like it's setting up for something later on. I'm like, okay, why'd you just throw that line out there, right? Interesting. So yeah, we have our whole team meeting up, and I think that Shinoa looks good with the bow. It's literally a bow tie. I love it. It fits her personality very well. And I like that Yu gets a little blushy because Yu's a teenage boy, right? So him seeing Shinoa and Mitsuba, of course he get a little blushy, right? He's a teenage boy. He's got lots of hormones and emotions going on right now. He's at that point. He's at that phase in his life. Makes sense, right? And he's just kind of like, shut up. Blah, blah. But yeah, so this part is really interesting that Shinoa, she casually mentions when they're talking about the vampires taking back the Kansai region, and Shinjuku is where they're all meeting up at. But when they get to the spot where they're meeting up with everybody, she says, oh, well, I'm still developing. I'm still growing. My sister, she had big boobs and everything. And, she said she was a beautiful woman. The moment she said she was, I was like, oh, no. And Yu's like, well, where is she? And she's like, oh, she's dead. And she just says it like nonchalant, like it's no big deal. And Yu's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then that line that she says, she goes, everyone has lost someone at some point now. So me saying I have a dead sibling is nothing compared to anybody else. And that's really sad because, yeah, everybody there has at least lost someone or is in the process of losing someone. Like with Kimizuki, his sister's very ill, so he could lose her at any time. So no one in the Imperial Demon Army is a stranger to loss. And I think that's really sad. Like the fact that she just brushes it off like it's nothing. I'm like, okay, that's Shinoa's, probably her inspiration is her sister's death. I'm like, okay. But we don't know if it's like a death. I'm assuming it's from one of the vampires because she makes a comment. The way she talks about her sister kind of implies that. But yeah, I also love that Yu and Shinoa and Kimizuki all kind of personalize their uniforms, or at least they don't wear them traditionally like all the other members of the army, except Yoichi. Yoichi wears it to the T. He's like, this is what we're supposed to look like, right? And it's like, yeah, it's... And the way Shinoa phrases that is that she's already dead. And the look on Yu's face, like he's like genuine about his concern, Like Yu puts on a front that he's tough, but he is really caring and considerate, right? And that's kind of how Mitsuba is. Mitsuba puts on a front that she's really tough, but she's also kind of in the same boat as him. Yeah. And I get the feeling that Mitsuba and Shinoa, they don't really get along, but they kind of do. They're like, frenemies. It's kind of funny, but Mitsuba has the bow tie, whereas Shinoa takes it to another level. And then Guren just looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Guren's like, why am I here? Why am I babysitting these children? Why can't I take a nap somewhere? What is the point? Like, he just would rather be anywhere else than right here. Which is hilarious, right? It's kind of hilarious. So then, yeah, and Yoichi's just excited to be there. And I love that Kimizuki calls him Baka-yu. Like, you idiot, you, Baka-yu. I really love that. The phrasing of that's really funny in Japanese. But yeah, so Guren makes this comment that they're all comrades. And the whole point is that you have to have 5. You have to have 5 of them together in order for it to work. Like, it's a tried and tested measure that you have to have 5 companions to make it work. You have 3, no, it felt very Monty Python. 4 is outright, must have 5. But he also makes the comment that You're all nakama now. You're all friends now. And friends are more important than family. And that seems like such a throwaway line. Like, why would he say that? But, but I have a feeling that that's going to come up later when Yu meets Mika, because Mika's family. And I have a feeling that down the road, it's going to be like, okay, what's more important, your friends or your family? And Yu's going to have to decide. And I'm like, that's going to set up some interesting dynamics there, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. I love MITSUBA'S weapon, the axe, the giant battle axe. In the OP, I thought it was a scythe. No, it's a big old axe. I love it. It's very cool. It's kind of fitting for her character. It's really neat. The design's cool on it. I like it a lot. And so Guren is going to head. They're basically all going to rendezvous at Shinjuku. He's just going a different way around, right? And so, yeah. I like the idea that they all have to stick together. The Four Horsemen of John is such a odd, some of you commented in the YouTube comments, like, it's such an odd name for an antagonistic, like, monster. The Four Horsemen of John. There's a lot of Christian undertones in this. It's interesting. And the vampires, when they encounter the vampires, they seem very wary of the cursed gear because obviously it can kill them, but they're very disgusted by it too. Like, oh, you humans are using these demons. I'm like, how are the demons and the vampires different? That's going to be curious to explore. Like, what's the difference? There's a lot of, like, Christian symbolism, like with the white and the black and the angels and everything and the Four Horsemen of John. It's going to be interesting. And Mitsuba makes a comment later on about why the Four Horsemen of John confront them. And it has to do with the fact that humanity's repopulated too much. It's reproduced too much. And they're trying to cut down the population control. And I'm like, interesting. Interesting indeed. But yeah, old Yu, I like Yu more and more as a protagonist as the series goes on, because we peel back. From the start, he seems like just a hot-headed kid. But the more you peel back and you see him kind of by himself and you get kind of into his headspace, the more you realize that he's actually a caring, considerate person. He's just putting on a front, right? And so they send them on a mission to go to Harrisburg and find a settlement of vampires that hunt humans and go from there. And it sounds very much like the same setup that Yu was used to back when he was a kid. So of course he gets triggered by when that vampire talks about them being livestock. And that triggers Yu and he's like, oh, hell no. And we go from there. And yeah, it makes sense they use the little girl as a means to try to trap them. I don't know if I trust the little girl still. I feel like she's still making, especially once they let her go, I'm like, did she just lure you into a trap? Like, why didn't, okay. For a second I'd be like, well, why wouldn't you take her with you just to make sure, you know? But then that'd put her in danger and they don't want to do that. But still, I feel like it's a trap. Like she just led them to a trap because the vampires told her to. And maybe they made a deal with her, like, if you lure these kids in here, we'll let your family go, or something like that. I get bad vibes. I really do. And Mitsuba warns you not to get ahead of himself. And I missed it, I was too busy reading, but you see the airplane that crashed, like, from the start of the series, right? You see the airplane that crashed there, only it's got, like, trees growing up through it now. And so, for some reason, the Four Horsemen of John get dramatically stronger once they're half a mile from the wall. Why? I feel like that's going to be explained, but it's curious that she knows this. And she tells them and nobody questions it. So that's curious. I'm assuming we'll find out why. Interesting. Yeah, and Yu's like, well. And then, yeah, so it looks like there's a part of me that thinks that Shinoa has a crush on Mitsuba. There's a part of me that thinks that, but she gets all blushy around her too, and Yu's like, wait, what? But interesting. And I just love the imagery of the entire city. It's just been abandoned and everything's just like destroyed and there's greenery and grass running up through it. It's so fascinating. Like everything from the virus is just, you see, which is curious because we need to talk about that. The virus that infected them, Kimizuki's sister has the virus, and that purple blotch that's on her face looks like the purple blotches that get onto you. So I'm like, is the virus related something to the demons? Did humanity goof? Did we mess up? We never do that, but you know, did we mess up? So I feel like it's connected. I feel like the demon's contract that makes the skin flare up and is purple is somehow connected to the virus. But don't tell me. I don't want to be spoiled, but it just seems like they're interconnected, right? Very curious. So yeah, she literally is used as a trap. And Mitsuba gets frustrated. And then, yeah, this all makes sense now once we see the flashback that Mitsuba doesn't want you running off because she's like, no, it's a trap. But he's so empathetic and he's like, no, I gotta save her, that he pulls away just like she did earlier. And that's why she gets mad at him. But only in this case, she's actually able to help him, whereas Mitsuba in the past couldn't help out her friend. And plus, there's the others there. But I love that Shinoa, like, activates the scythe and it goes around Kimizuki. That animation was really cool. And she's like, no. Mitsuba needs to teach you a lesson. We're going to stay here and let the lesson be taught. It's fine. And we don't all want to go over there because the vampires are all going over there. We want to make sure that we're distanced enough where they can't just corral us all in one location and hurt us. And then the 3 vampires show up, and they're, unlike some of the vampires we've seen in the past episodes, these vampires are much more contemplative. They're thinking a lot more. They're much more tepid and, like, hesitant to attack, probably because they know they have cursed weaponry. And then, yeah, we get to see Yoichi use his weapon. We get to see Kimizuki use his. And, yeah, they basically decide to retreat, right? And, yeah, this curse, like, wraps up around his head. Interesting. Interesting indeed. But I don't think no one else calls out the name of their weapon. They all just use the weapons as normal. They don't call out the actual demon itself other than you. Very curious. And then, yeah, so the one vampire says, we'll call for backup. We're going to capture them. Yeah. But then, and they decide to retreat. Interesting. Very interesting. And Mitsuba's like, we're on enemy territory. We need to retreat because otherwise we're just sitting ducks and we don't need to have that happen. And yeah, Mitsuba smacking you. Oh, and you can see it this time. Yeah, you can see the smack on his face, like the coloring. The animation did it great. And then, yeah, Mitsuba reprimands him. She's like, your actions put the entire squad in danger. You were lucky those vampires only have second-class weapons. So there's different classes of weapons. Good to know. I have a feeling Mika has a first-class weapon because, you know, he's the progeny of Cruel. I figure his weapon's probably the most fancy. Like, spare no expense, right? And Farad probably has a stupid first-class weapon because it's Farad and he's a diva. But yeah, you can see Mitsuba's very upset. She's like, I'm mad at you because you could have hurt all of us. And Yu's like, yeah, you're right. I don't regret what I did, though. But yeah, I get it. He's like, I'm sorry that I was reckless, but I don't. He's like, don't, no regrets, but, and I love when she kicks the ground. She doesn't kick him. She's just so frustrated. And then Yu's like, you can punch me all you want if it makes you feel better. And she's like, that doesn't make me feel better, so no. She's like, I hate people like you the most. Which is sad because he's like her, so she's just basically being kind of self-loathing. People like you lead the team to annihilation. And she's referring to herself. So it's kind of sad that she's just being, a little bit self-loathing there. That is really sad. Poor Mitsuba. And then, yeah, he gets the coat and stuff back from the girl, who's not at all deterred by this conversation. And he said, we only did what we were supposed to do. And then Mitsuba promises her that the Japanese demon army will protect her. Okay. So then, yeah, we get the shower scene. Of course we get a shower scene. I like they have their own shower stalls. But we find out part of Mitsuba's backstory in that she blamed herself from the loss of her comrades. And so she's kind of projecting. She's seeing a lot of you in herself. And so she's projecting that. And he's just like, huh? You in the final part of this episode just has a very much like, I don't understand women vibe. He's like, teenage girls are so complicated. Like that's kind of the vibe that he gives off. It's great. And then I love that you and them see them come out of the shower and stuff. And Shinoa and Mitsuba are really pretty. And yeah, and there is a moment where you and Mitsuba look at each other. I don't quite ship Mitsuba with you. I ship you and Mika. But I can see that you is, she's a girl. He sees that. It's fine. And then Yu's like, what are they doing? Why are they fighting in the shower? And Yoichi and Kimizuki both have sisters. They're like, we know. They're like, don't worry about it. And so then, yeah. And Yu tries to make the little girl feel better. He's like, if you'll smile every day and live happily from now on, then that's enough. Like, just live life happily. And Mitsuba's like, ugh, how dare you? And he's like, what? What'd I do? I'm just trying to help. And yeah, Mitsuba just can't stand it. And so then the little girl says that it's at Omotesando Station. Uh-huh. Yeah, the vampires are raising humans. Okay, in the alley of the subway station. So let's go down into this dark alley all by ourselves. Seems legit. And so then we get this thing where Mitsuba is like, when we see the civilians, we're going to ignore them. Ignore them until we take care of the vampires. We don't want to involve them in any of this, which makes sense. Now, whether or not Yu is going to do that, I don't know. But yeah, she's like, we don't have enough room to help other people. And I like that there's this big poster for this musical and it says, in return for blood. And it shows like a girl, a woman, and a vampire. Like, interesting. Like, interesting foreshadowing maybe? I don't know. And then we have the mannequins in the broken window and everything. And then she says, if there's too many vampires, we'll retreat. And Yu's like, retreat again? Like, Yu is expecting they were just going to go in and fight to the bitter end. But it makes sense. Mitsuba's like, no, if we can't win, we want to keep on living to fight another day. So yeah, we're not just going to stick around and fight to the bitter, death of someone. We're just going to retreat and regain our strength and then come back. And Yu doesn't seem to understand that yet. So interesting. So yeah, this episode was very good to set up Mitsuba's character. I like her character so far. And it's also a setup episode for this station that looks terrifying. So fun times. A lot of you have been like, will you read the manga? And if it's anything like Yona, I might have to read the manga at this point. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge and see where we're at. But I am really curious. So I may end up reading the manga for this series afterwards if it keeps on continuing on, right? I may have to do that. So, but yeah, I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, what y'all thought of this episode. I really like this episode. It was good. It set Mitsuba's character very well. I'm very curious to see what they all do down in this station. I feel like it's a trap. There seemed like there's a lot of little foreshadowy stuff in this episode, little crumbs that are all going to come back later, and I'm going to be excited to see what that looks like. So, in any case, I hope y'all had a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. But in the meantime, I'll be back next week with another episode of Seraph of the End. Bye.